This is an important point. A lot of folks, they think, okay, if there's a robot that can be creative, maybe that squeezes out the creativity for other people. But that's the exact opposite of what we all experience in real life. The most creative times in our lives are when we're around other creative people, when we're allowed to riff with other people. And I wish I had more opportunities to riff ideas and not feel judgment. And think crazy thoughts, and for something else or someone else to say, hey, that's a cool idea, Sal, but what about this? And what about that? Or, I don't know if that'll work because you haven't thought about that edge case.
Mr. Sal Khan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thanks for having me, Chase.
Well, among your many accomplishments, you've just written a new book that we are definitely going to talk about. It's at the intersection of learning and AI, which are probably two of the hottest vectors for the internet in the last 10 years. You happen to be sitting at the intersection of those. But for the handful of people who might not be familiar with you or your work, I'm wondering if you can give us a little backstory, a little bit about yourself, so that the audience can orient.
Sure. I'm the founder of Khan Academy. We're a not-for-profit with the mission of free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And the way that we try to do that is uh, it's a website at its most simple level where students, actually people of all ages, can learn everything from, we have Khan Academy Kids, which is an early learning app, and then I guess you could say Big Khan Academy goes all the way from second or third grade to early college. A lot of folks associate us with math and math videos, but we're much more than that. We have actually most of our resources go into the adaptive software and the exercises, but we go into the sciences, humanities, increasingly into the writing. And all of this started as a family project back in 2004. My original background was in technology, and then I found myself as an analyst at a hedge fund. I got married in 2004. My family from New Orleans came up and visited me in Boston, and just came out of conversation. My 12-year-old cousin Nadia at the time needed tutoring, or I thought she needed tutoring. So I started tutoring her remotely when she went to New Orleans. It worked out for her. She got caught up with her class, a little ahead of her class. I start tutoring her younger brothers. Word spreads in my family, free tutoring is going on. And before I know it, there's 10, 15 cousins, family, friends I'm tutoring every day after the markets close. My day job was an analyst at a hedge fund. And 2005, I started writing software for them. 2006, I started making videos. 2008, I set it up as a not-for-profit. In 2009, quit my day job. 2010, we got our first real funding. And then you fast forward to now, and it's much more than me. We're about 300 folks, approaching 300 folks. We have thousands of volunteers around the world help localizing. We have hundreds of thousands of donors. And we have about 100, I think the latest number is approaching 170 million registered users.
170 million users. What is the breakdown of area of focus for those 170 million users, roughly? We're not looking for journalistic stats here. It's mostly just to get an idea of where the emphasis is around your learning platform.
So our most popular topic, almost from the first day I started writing software and uploading videos, is Algebra 1. And that's not a surprise. That tends to be the first class that really assumes that you have fluency in everything that came before it. And, we all know folks who hit a bit of a wall when they've got to that first algebra class. So Algebra 1 in particular, math in general, is definitely what we've been most known for, and where we probably have the most usage. But a close second is our science courses, especially the various chemistry. We have middle school, high school, college level chemistry, biology, physics. That's probably a close second. We also have things like computer programming that are pretty popular. About half of our usage is North America. The other half is rest of world.
Amazing. Now the question that's on everybody's minds, I've previewed that we were going to have this conversation today, and AI is obviously transforming our world faster than, I might say, than any other technology has in the last year. We're seeing, very sophisticated LLMs and the ability to have a conversation with a robot, essentially. And it's clear that this can be used for many different things. And you all at the Khan Academy have essentially most aggressive learning platform that I've seen out there in piloting the way that other computers can help us learn and learn more quickly and in a more customized fashion. So, with the backstory again, with my background and history as an online learning founder, I think our audience is pretty up to speed with all the ups and downs and the ways that this is going to be valuable for access and many of the things that you just mentioned across those subjects, but specifically how AI is going to continue to pioneer new ground in this industry. What's your, give us the state of the state here, because I think a lot of people are wary or are concerned. There are a lot of upside, but there's considerable downside. So paint a picture of the landscape for us, if you would.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend that I have a perfect crystal ball here. And you mentioned the state of the state. It's changing almost every week. Just when you feel, and I think I speak for everyone,
So,
just when you feel like you've caught up,
mind-boggling.
something else drops, and you're like, oh my God, that changes everything. We have to work on that as well. Um, I always, and I said this well before AI became a big thing. It should never be about the technology. It should always be about the problems that you're trying to solve, or the opportunities you're trying to capture. And if you think about this journey that I've been on, from tutoring my cousins to writing software for them to making videos to now, everything that Khan Academy has been doing over the years, making teacher tools, working with districts, it's really all about scaling what I was originally doing with Nadia. What I was originally doing with Nadia was one-on-one tutoring. Hopefully, it was high quality. I believe it was high quality, and it was helping her. And it's always, both intuitively, people have known for, frankly, hundreds of years, if not from the beginning of time, that is the gold standard. But we had to make a compromise 200-300 years ago with mass public education, which for the most part has done wonderful things, where we didn't have the resources to give everyone a one-on-one tutor. So we batch students together, the factory model of education, so to speak. You apply some assessment every now and then. You filter students based on how they're doing. If you haven't understood a concept, too bad. You get that C in the grade book and the class moves on, usually to a concept that builds on top of the one that you didn't fully understand. And it just gets harder and harder and harder. So everything we've been doing at Khan Academy has been leveraging technology to maybe finally address this issue. Maybe we can have both scale and economically viable solutions that also get closer to this ideal of personalization. Mastery learning. Mastery learning is just a fancy way of saying, if you haven't learned it well yet, you should have the opportunity and the incentive to keep working on it. And by the way, this is what not just professional, anyone who's serious about sports, that's what they're doing. Anyone who's serious about their arts, playing an instrument, that's what they're doing. And so that's the true north. And so when artificial intelligence, we've been toying with artificial intelligence over, for many years, to think about, okay, maybe it can help give recommendations or things like that for students. But when we saw what was possible with GPT-4 in particular, and Sam Altman and Greg Brockman at OpenAI showed it to us the summer of 2022. This was 6-7 months before anyone else had seen it. It had and has its issues, but we said, wow, this could get, with the right prompting and the guardrails and extra infrastructure, it was almost indiscernible from when I used to do Yahoo Instant Messenger with Nadia back in 2004. And so we said, and we saw the rate of improvement when you see the leap between GPT-3 and GPT-4, and the murmurs that the leap to GPT-5, which seems soon, is going to be similar. And these are like leaps that are happening every year. It was pretty clear to us that we needed to start investing there and seeing if we could really use AI and everything else that Khan Academy is doing to get that much closer to being a world-class tutor for every student. And also, we're talking about a world-class teaching assistant for any teacher.
So that is a very well articulated state of the state. And now I'm going to dig in, scratch that one level deeper, because the people who listen to watch the show are we over index on creativity and the arts in general, a lot of entrepreneurship. So we have folks who are neurodivergent or different or don't see themselves as fitting into the traditional model. And when you say one on one, does that mean that there is increased hope for people who have learning differences, different styles? And specifically, what about the arts? Because I know that has been one of the reasons I wanted to establish that Khan Academy was tended towards more math and sciences, was because a lot of the questions that are going to come up from our community are around, yeah, but okay, what about the art kids? Because there's been an over indexing on science and technology for the last, 25 years. Where does that leave this community?
Yeah, I think all people, kids, adults, whether they call themselves an art kid or whether they call themselves a science kid or a math kid, I think it is important for all of them to have some core skills and fluencies and capabilities. And so I see this even in my own family where some of my kids identify more as a STEM kid, some identify more as a art kid, but personalization in any domain in theory should help someone more, and it tends to help people who are at either end of the distribution. If you're a hyper precocious young person who wants to race ahead in any topic, personalization usually really benefits you. But also, if you're someone who has a few extra gaps in your knowledge, you're a little embarrassed by some of the things that you maybe should have known by now, but you don't. Personalization really helps with those students. And the reality is, there's almost no one who's perfectly in the middle for every class.
Yeah.
Almost everyone is really strong in certain areas and maybe weak in other areas, and then maybe middle of the road in others. And once again, and sometimes it's in the same course. You might find one concept in math, say, really easy, and you felt bored, and then the next month you're like, wait, what is this thing? I'm lost. We've all experienced that. So if I was speaking to folks who identify as more creative types or more art focused, I think in general, personalization is going to help them, and personalization in all subjects. Now, one of the things that I'm excited about, there's Bloom's pedagogical taxonomy. Anyone who's in the education world has seen that pyramid, where the bottom of the pyramid is things like rote memorization. Can you memorize where every country in the world is, or what year did the Civil War start, things like that. And by the way, just because it's the bottom doesn't mean that it's not important. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist, where I do think people still should know facts. um, but then you build layers on that. One layer higher, you have more, let's call it procedural skills. A layer higher, you are able to interpret things. And then at the very top of Bloom's taxonomy, you have creation. That you have synthesis, and then you have creation, that you can put things together. And that creation can happen in any domain. Obviously, we oftentimes think of creation as writing or composing music, but it could also be designing an experiment. It could be a mathematical proof, or some combination of all of the above. What I'm really excited about is, based on the technology that existed, say, 2 years ago, I thought Khan Academy could do a really good job at, say, the bottom half of that pyramid. Not just the very bottom, but go pretty high up to synthesis and different skills. But the real creation, we had a few things like in our coding platform where you could do that and get peer review, but it was hard to do at scale. And what's exciting about generative AI is, it can create with you, it can help give feedback to you on very open ended, subjective things in ways that we couldn't do before. Now, today, Conmigo, which is the generative AI that we have on Khan Academy, it's primarily doing things that are text and symbolic based. But it's not hard to imagine a world, because we know the AIs have the capability, where it can give you feedback on your art project or music composition, or you can work on something with the AI and turn it into a more ambitious project. So I'm hopeful this is actually going to be a really cool tool for folks who want to be creative.
I think, yeah, I was fascinated by that section of the book. And again, I'll push the book in just a second here. It is Brave New Words, brilliant title, and specifically this part about creativity, that the ability to feed Conmigo an image or a drawing of a student and get criticism. It's sort of like a worldwide art crit, which is one of the things that is most valuable for art students in art school, is to be able to get criticized by your peers and your teacher. And, to have that built in, to me, uh, is, as you said, it's very, very promising, not just for people who identify in that universe, but for people who are maybe more curious, and they can do this in private, having a computer give them some feedback where they might otherwise be a little more reluctant to take the risk of putting themselves out there. So I was optimistic. That to me is an interesting bridge to the role that teachers play, teachers and other students in this learning process. So it's my understanding that your goal with really pioneering so much of this AI around learning is not so much to replace teachers and peer students and and parents, but I'm hoping you can articulate what is that role.
Yeah, if you think about the the tasks that you normally associate with teaching, there's the ones that most of us are aware of because we've all gone to school. Many teachers might give a lesson, and that lesson can take different forms. Sometimes it's more students sit passively and there's a lecture. Sometimes it's a more interactive type of lesson. I clearly favor the second of the two, especially in a world of on-demand video. I don't think we need a world of lectures anymore. But there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that most of us don't appreciate that teachers have to do. One, they have to plan those lessons. That can take many hours a week. Then they have to write progress reports. They have to do a lot of administrative tasks, increasingly because of various regulations, right? IEPs for students with special needs. Imagine being a seventh grade English teacher and you the students just submitted. You have 5 classes that you're teaching. Each of them have 30 kids. That's 150 kids, and they just submitted their essays on The Great Gatsby. You're going to probably spend 20 hours that weekend reading 150 seventh grade essays on The Great Gatsby. That's hard work.
I was
And
my
I could
wife's
keep
first
listing.
career was as a teacher, and I watched that firsthand, and it was insane how much work was along for the ride.
It's a ton of work, and so uh, we feel that, well, a couple of things. If we could use technology, especially now generative AI, to help free up the teacher, regardless of what the teacher is teaching. They could be a kindergarten art teacher, they could be a high school PE teacher, or they could be a math teacher, or they could be a writing teacher. If the AI can help them write the lesson plans, give them a first pass grade on these Great Gatsby essays, help write these progress reports. They have to write a progress report for every one of those 150 kids to those parents. Um, that already we're getting evidence that it can save teachers many hours a week. And it's not that if you take that time away, what does the teacher do? They still have plenty to do. They can now have more, first of all, more energy for themselves. Burnout in the education profession has never been higher. So that's a very important thing, but also more energy with students. And what we've always talked about is if we can, if we're saying, hey, stop giving a lecture, that doesn't mean that there's nothing to do. In fact, it's a much richer thing to do. Even before generative AI, we said, hey, why don't you use tools, say Khan Academy, there's other tools for different subjects where you can do more active learning in the classroom, where students can be learning at their zone of proximal development, at their learning edge, so that very few people are lost and bored. And the teacher is there, one, to be a bit of a conductor, to make sure that the symphony is working out well, that students are on task, their peers are maybe supporting them in a healthy way when they need that support. They're able to observe the classroom and have access to data to realize, oh, I should do a more focused intervention with these 5 students. These 5 students really have a gap in writing a thesis statement, or negative numbers, or they don't understand atomic number, whatever it might be. But the other students seem to know it. So I'm going to keep letting them get that practice, and it all seems to be going well. And then after 20 minutes, I can go work with another set of students. Maybe there's one student who's really not themselves this week, and I can go and sit down with them and have a 5-minute conversation about what's going on with their life. And if you think about it, especially that last category, I think every teacher dreams. That's why they go into the profession. They want to be the person who can turn around not just one kid's life, many kids' lives, but then the reality of the day to day is, oh, I got to do all this paperwork 20 hours a week before I even see the kids. Then when I see the kids, there's 30 of them facing me. They're at 6 different grade levels, even though they're in one classroom. And I guess I'm just going to, I wish I could really be that person that could move the dial for, and a lot of teachers are doing it, but it's happening in magic time and with magic energy. So if we can personalize the classroom more, students are more engaged, teachers, if we can give them more tools in that support, they're going to have more energy for engagement. And I think and we already see this, we've seen this before, even generative AI, it unlocks more time for human interactions, which is the real value of the people in the room.
Thank you for that. I think it helps. Yeah, it helps build a 360-degree picture of AI when we can talk about not just students, but the role that the teachers play and parents. And given that most of our listenership are having, they're not in the process of learning science right now because our audience is not teenagers. So we are parents, or we are professionals that are in the creative industries. So through that lens in particular, what do you feel like? There's a great line about instead of having one Mozart over 500 years, we now have the possibility of having 1,000 Mozarts, 1,000 Einsteins, 1,000 Da Vincis. What is that? Um, is that a simplistic view because it doesn't consider the downside of people who are concerned about losing their job or concerned that their kid's just going to, tap in a prompt and write a screenplay in 15 minutes just with some simple prompting? Like, can you chime in on the good versus evil concept that people are concerned about with AI taking jobs and making creativity all feel so similar? Like, how ought we think about that? I'm trying to give a model for someone who's scared to think about it in a much more promising way, because your book is A, brilliant, and B, very, very optimistic, which is one of the things I love about it. And I'm hoping you can pass some of that optimism on to the skeptics who are listening right now.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is it's going to be all of the above. It's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll traffic in the ugly for a little bit, and then we'll get to the optimistic side. The even outside of education, the things that I'm most worried about are fraud is going to get just way more sophisticated. You're going to get calls from your children saying, "Hey, mom, dad, I'm stuck. I just got arrested." It's going to be in their voice. You're going to be able to ask them questions.
Yeah, wire me
Um,
$500
but
to
it's
get
going
out
to
of
be
jail.
yeah, this already happened here. There was
Yeah.
a case out here in Northern California. This happened. It was a completely spoofed voice. And people are going to have to come up with their own secret passwords. So you say, okay, what's the secret password so that I know you're not an AI? Which I recommend everyone do. I've done that with my family already.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Okay.
you're going to see state actors or just troublemakers. Try to you could create a run on banks with fake video of people lined up around the bank, and not getting their money back and things like that. You can obviously you can create fake videos of politicians or celebrities doing things that by the time the clarification comes out that it's fake, half the world will think that it's real. So those are real risks. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, there are going to be job dislocations. There is the opportunity for this turning into a crutch and for people leaning on it. What I'm always telling myself, and I go to a lot of dinner parties now, and AI tends to be a topic, and people tend to wallow in the negative, like, oh,
Yeah.
woe is me, how is this going to happen? And then they philosophize, is this going to be good, Ned? Is this going to be bad? And I tell everyone, look, it's going to be as good or bad as we make it. The bad stuff, we know there's bad people with bad intent, and they're not going to slow down. They're going to, we can regulate whatever we want. They're not going to care. We can't regulate Russia. We can't regulate criminal rings. They're going to do what they're going to do, and we need to make sure that good actors are doing the right things to mitigate that, and that we're all educated so that we don't fall prey to that. But on the good side, we shouldn't just sit and wait. We should say, okay, there are risks in education. There are risks of a student using it to cheat. There are risks of um, bias in an AI, but there's ways to not only mitigate those things, but also ways to then use it to enhance learning. And obviously, that's the way. But I talk a lot about, hey, let's use AI to enhance HI, human intelligence, human purpose, human meaning, and I can give a ton of examples on the cheating issue, which is probably the one that's most obvious to most people. In particular, cheating on writing is where people are most worried, but it can apply to frankly any creative act. What we're launching on Conmigo for this coming school year is a teacher can come up with an assignment, a writing assignment with the AI, including a rubric, assign it through the AI, and then the AI tells the students, "Hey, your teacher wants you to work on this. Let's work on this together." The AI won't write the paper. They'll say, "Okay, let's come up with a thesis statement." They can go back and forth, and this is an important point. A lot of folks, they think, okay, if there's a robot that can be creative, maybe that squeezes out the creativity for other people. But that's the exact opposite of what we all experience in real life. The most creative times in our lives are when we're around other creative people, when we're allowed to riff with other people. And I wish I had more opportunities to riff ideas and not feel judgment, and think crazy thoughts, and for something else or someone else to say, hey, that's a cool idea, Sal, but what about this? And what about that? Or, I don't know if that'll work because you haven't thought about that edge case. And so students can come up with a thesis statement. They can do outlining with the AI. Then they can write their paper. The AI is highlighting parts of the passage, really like you're collaborating on a Google Doc, and says, well, I think you could make the hook a little bit better, or you can back up this argument. This data point really doesn't seem too valid, or can you give the citation here? So like a really good writing coach. And then once the student's ready to submit, and the AI can give them a preliminary sense, like, hey, based on my view of the rubric, I think you're already at an A- level here. Do you want to submit it? Student submits it. Obviously, the teacher maybe can get that preliminary grade. Teacher would be the final arbiter. But what the teacher is getting isn't just the final output and a potential grade around it. The teacher is getting the whole process. The AI could say, look, I'm pretty confident this is Chase's work. We worked on this together for about 4.5 hours. Chase did 95% of the work. Here's the whole transcript of our conversation. If I were to summarize it, he had a little bit of trouble coming up with a thesis statement, eventually got there. He was actually pretty good at doing the research. He found some really good resources. I thought it was a pretty strong paper. It's pretty consistent with the other writing that he's done in class. I'm confident it's his work. If Chase goes to Chat GPT or gets his older sister to write the paper, our AI is going to say, I don't know where this paper came from. We didn't work on this together. And by the way, it's not consistent with his other writing. So not only does it undermine AI cheating, it undermines all forms of cheating. In the book, I have a chapter on cheating, and I always like to start
Yes.
from first principles. Like, okay, before we even talk about AI, what's the state of cheating before AI? And honestly, AI just put a spotlight on something that has been pretty rampant, and it seems like it's been getting worse for the last few decades, probably because of the internet. Um, and so not only does it undermine all of those forms of cheating reasonably well, but it's now supporting the student better, it's supporting the teacher better, and it's giving the teacher with less time more insights, because the AI could say, look, I just did all 150 papers, and it turns out about 30 of your students are really struggling with thesis statements. In each of your classes, you should do a little mini session on thesis statements for about 20 minutes. And by the way, I've created a draft lesson plan for you. That is going to change writing. And obviously the students are far more supported in their writing than they've ever been. But that's only, that's one example of, if we take an active viewpoint, we can turn these fears or these risks into opportunities that not just mitigate the fear or risk, but actually get us to a place that's way better than we were before.
Absolutely brilliant articulation of that. Thank you so much. Again, the book is Brave New Words: How AI Will Revolutionize Education and Why That's a Good Thing. It's available anywhere you buy books now. Hats off. It's very difficult to write about learning, and especially when people are asking you to see the future in something that's changing so fast. I think you did a masterful job. Anywhere else you would direct the listeners and watchers our attention beyond just the book, which again is absolutely worth its weight in gold, especially if you are concerned about any of these things, losing your job, the role that it plays in creativity, or if you've got kiddos who are going to be going through this, I'll call it a revolution. Anywhere else should steer our attention?
Other than the book, obviously Khan Academy is out there. Our mission: free world class education. It's for people of all ages, but especially if you have kids, have them start to do 20, 30 minutes a day. We have a lot of efficacy studies that it works well. The AI work, actually, we are soon going to make all of the tools free for teachers. This is a big deal because the generative AI we're using is actually quite costly from a computation point of view. But we got philanthropic support to give it away free to teachers. And then we're trying to make it as accessible as possible for teachers, for students and parents, so that they get that AI layer on top of Khan Academy.
Grateful for your time today, Sal. Thank you so much for being a guest. And from Mr. Khan and myself, signing off, hope you have an amazing day. Good luck with this next chapter of AI and learning. We're very, very excited. And thanks again for being a guest. Until next time, we're out.